If we can start heading to our seats, because we're gonna start in a minute or two, please. Good afternoon. We're ready to start. Great. Good afternoon, distinguished guests and colleagues. First, on behalf of our space, allow me to thank you all for joining us today. Our space is a refugee-led forum that pushes for critical dialogues, that pushes away from state-centric conversation to more solutions led by impacted communities. Our space is led by refugee advocates in collaboration with different stakeholders, such as international organizations, INGOs, academia, foundations, and policy thought leaders, who are trying to bring lived experience and refugee expertise to the policy-making venues, but in a way that pushes beyond tokenism, in a way that is more genuine and based in co-governance. We all know that the humanitarian system is going through a reckoning time. Change is inevitable at this moment. However, any shifts that does not centralize refugee agenda and based on building on refugee expertise would risk ending up in the same power structure that we are stuck in it at this moment. So this period of time requires a visionary leadership, courage, and creativity. The next Higher Commissioner for Refugees will play a very critical role in addressing these challenges and also shaping what comes next. Today's dialogue with the Higher Commissioner for Refugees candidate builds on the first historic dialogue that took place in New York City almost a month ago, with some confirmed candidate at that time. Today's dialogue continues the conversation with some of the candidates who couldn't make it the last time and some new confirmed candidates. At our space, we view three main objectives behind these dialogues. The first one is to elevate refugee leadership and agenda. Such dialogues and such spaces open the space for refugees to ask direct questions to the candidates who are seeking to run UNHCR. The second one is to try and set some expectations for further engagement with the next Higher Commissioner for Refugee. Refugees could be part of the solution, and we all know that. The Higher Commissioner candidates so far have been very willingly open to engage with this refugee-led platform, and we're really super grateful for that. And we're hoping to build on that for a longer-term engagement with the new Higher Commissioner. So we promise you, You will hear us a lot, you will see us a lot. We can be painful sometimes, but anything for our people. The third objective is building some transparency or promoting some transparency in the selection process. We all know that the selection process for the next Higher Commissioner remains largely opaque. Maybe this conversation or these dialogues would bring some transparency and openness and allows the communities to actually hear directly from the candidates and specifically the refugee community. So thank you again for joining us today. And first, allow me to show our deep appreciation for IGVA, who is our partner. They are our partner or co-organizer for the event today. And I would like to call Mr. Jamie Mann to the stage to offer some welcoming remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope those applause were for our colleagues from the refugee space and not for me. Many of you will have already heard me speak on this topic a number of times in the past, so I will keep my comments incredibly short. First, I want to say thank you to all the candidates for joining us today and for those that participated in this first meeting in New York as well. I think that this is unprecedented and maybe is something that should be taken on board by the Secretary General's office as a great opportunity for other future senior appointments. As we look through the history of NGO engagement in the selection process and in the candidatures of High Commissioner, ICFA has had a 25-year legacy insofar as we have had the opportunity to participate somewhat insofar as providing a questionnaire, which I know a number of the candidates this year have also participated in. But that has helped set the tone, I hope, and I am told by the current High Commissioner that it was certainly part of his interview process, that his panel asked the questions, why did you answer the NGOs this way, and what do you see as a future role? This process takes us one step further, and that is really when you speak to refugees and have the opportunity to hear from them and their priorities, how are you interpreting that as you move forward if selected for the position? I think this is incredibly, as we heard, historical and incredibly important as a means of making space. What are the key things? I've just got back from New York where we were at the IASC principals meeting, and I heard from the High Commissioner on my walk here from my office, wishing everyone good luck today. We have a situation that we're facing, not just in 2025, but as we move forward, the situation that we are being asked to address with growing displacement and growing refugee crisis around the world, but with a lot less financial, in the traditional sense, financial resources to respond to that. And I think that is a question that we have to have in our minds as all actors in this system. If we look today, the last numbers that we have, and this excludes, of course, what we see happening in Al-Fashir today, 123 million people displaced due to conflict around the world. Many of those are falling outside of the traditional response system. And we have to figure out how do we reach beyond our UN partners and NGOs and find ways to better respond to needs. And I think partly that is down to looking at diaspora, looking into figuring out means of local host communities taking on responsibilities and acknowledging where diaspora, current refugees, and host communities already take on so much of the responsibility. And as we heard, moving it beyond tokenism and into real response networks. And I think that is what the message I hope I can leave with you, and that is what we're trying to achieve. And I applaud our space for opening this door, is an opportunity for us to hear your thoughts on how we move a relatively antiquated system, not just UNHCR, but our entire system, into a more responsive and forward-thinking mechanism that is encompassing all voices and all opportunities. At the same time, we're faced with financial restrictions, a hyper-prioritized response network, which inevitably is not addressing all the concerns that we are going to hear about today. One other comment that I have to mention is that at the meeting, the High Commissioner for Human Rights wanted me to make sure I do not forget that IHL is important, refugee law is important, but ultimately it's down to the respect of people's dignity and human rights that we're all here to fight for. And I really hope that we don't lose sight that titles of asylum seeker, refugee, migrant, those are important in legal terms, absolutely, but ultimately we're talking about human beings and doing the best for them. So I look forward to the discussion, and I look forward to speaking to you informally afterwards.
Thank you, Mr. Jamie, and we really appreciate ICFA's role in supporting the RLO's community. And now I want to introduce our moderator for the panel, Riz Gardi. Riz Gardi is an international human rights lawyer, advocate, and a trailblazer in the global refugee movement. Born stateless to a Kurdish refugee in Pakistan and to survivors of genocide. Riz is a co-founder and co-managing director of Refugee Seeking Equal Access at the Table, and the first Kurd to graduate from Harvard School of Law. Please welcome Riz to the stage.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests and colleagues. Thank you, Hudi, for grounding us so powerfully. And as you've highlighted, this marks the second round of discussions in a historic exchange, bringing together refugee leaders with candidates for the next High Commissioner for Refugees. We're thrilled to bring this conversation to Geneva, the heart of the humanitarian system. Facing political hostility and a strained humanitarian system, the appointment of the next United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees will shape the future of protection and solutions for millions worldwide. Before we start the panel, we will hear from two candidates who unfortunately could not be with us here in person today, but have very kindly recorded a video intervention for us. The first is Mr. Jesper Brodin, the CEO of INGA Group from Sweden. And then secondly, we will hear from His Excellency Dr. Barham Saleh, the former president of Iraq. And with that, we'll begin the video.
Hey everybody, sorry that I couldn't be with you physically in the meeting today, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to respond in a film version. These are incredibly challenging times for many of us and in so many dimensions. And obviously challenging times being a refugee, but also for the organization UNHCR. As we know, there has never been as many forcibly displaced people on the planet as it is today. The role of UNHCR has never been more important. At the same time, when we look even in the best scenario in the future, climate change will add millions of people that will need to have to leave their homes. And as such, the role of UNHCR will be even more important in the future. At the same time, it's a perfect storm. We find ourselves in a political crisis, in a crisis financially, and a crisis when it comes to trust. In the near future, we need to do three things, at least at the same time. Obviously, we need to address the acute financial constraints, make sure that we adapt to the new reality, and do that while protecting people, while protecting the spirit, support, safeguard the staff of UNHCR. Secondly, I believe we need to get started straight away to build a more resilient organization fit for the future challenges, but also where we create a dream together, where we actually want to achieve something better together tomorrow. It's financial resilience, but it's also organizational resilience. And finally, together with our friends across the UN system, across the humanitarian support system, we need to find a way where we become more effective together. I applaud the initiative of UN80 and the reset because it invites us to an opportunity not only to become more effective, to become more simple, but also an opportunity to restore trust in the world, trust for the system that we all believe in and represent. I think one of the most important things I've learned over the years leading big organization is to actually build trust through deep listening qualities, Deep inclusion, where you find ways to make sure that all the parts of a system is represented, is heard and can contribute. I also believe that result is not driven by enforcement, by the top, by somebody knowing the right direction. It's driven by purpose and working together. As a leader of an organization of 170,000 people in 40 plus countries with a big economy, we have seen crisis, we have seen pandemic, we've seen war, we've seen economic turbulence, and still I've had the opportunity to learn how you actually navigate, operate, but at the same time transform to something better. Over my years, I've had the pleasure to work with UNHCR and many more agencies in depth on the field, whether it's in the camps of Jordan, supporting refugees from Ukraine, building skills for employment programs in Europe, and much, much more. And as such, I bring my experience from leading big companies, big organizations, my experience from the field working in the humanitarian field. Most of all, I think this institution truly needs the best possible leader for the future. And I hope that in this process, with so many candidates, that there will be somebody who is picked. I wish all the candidates in this race together the best of luck, and whoever will have the opportunity to lead this organization, I will be giving my applause and support. Thank you.
Colleagues, partners in the humanitarian community, and fellow candidates, let me begin by expressing my sincere apologies for not being able to join you in person today. I deeply regret missing what I know is an important and timely dialogue. I want to thank our seat for this initiative and to express my deep appreciation to all NGO leaders, refugee-led organizations and advocates for the extraordinary work you do every day. For me, this candidacy is not only a professional commitment, it is deeply personal. I was twice a refugee, once as a teenager with my family fleeing persecution and war, and again as a young man escaping imprisonment and torture. I know what exile does to a family, a community, a nation. Later, as a public servant, I saw the same pain repeated. Millions displaced by war and conflict. I learned that compassion alone is not enough. Durable solutions demand courage, leadership, and the ability to unite people around hope. If entrusted with the leadership of UNHCR, I would begin with one clear premise. Refugees must be at the center of everything we do. We must see them not as mere statistics, but as people with agency and voice. Their perspective, together with yours, must shape policy, programs, and accountability. 75 years after its founding, UNHCR stands at a crossroad, facing unprecedented levels of displacement and diminishing resources. Nearly 2/3 of refugees live in protracted crises, often in countries already burdened by poverty and instability. This moment demands reforms. A UNHCR that is effective, transparent, inclusive, and closer to the ground. My vision is for a UNHCR that is both principled and practical, unwavering in its protection mandate, decisive in reform, and focused on durable solutions. No reform will succeed unless it protects the most vulnerable and the most at risk. Women and girls, survivors of violence, persons with disabilities, and the stateless must be at the center of protection and empowerment. Regarding the question about the 3 top priorities in the first 2 years, should I be appointed to this position, I will focus on the following 3 priorities. First, broaden the donor base, engaging emerging economies, faith based philanthropy, diasporas, and international financial institutions and private investors in shared responsibility. The second priority will be to ensure faster and accountable delivery through results-based budgeting, digital oversight, and transparent impact audits. The third priority will be to strengthen UNHCR's role as a convener, together with other aid agencies and aligning with financial institutions so that funding supports inclusion and host community resilience. As to the other question regarding refugee participation, to me, I would say refugee leadership must be structural, not just symbolic. I will institutionalize advisory councils of refugees and stateless persons at global and regional and country levels, ensuring that their voices inform strategy, programming, and evaluation. Inclusion must be practical and principled, a source of legitimacy and relevance and accountability. A key priority will be also localization for me, putting power and resources closer to where impact happens. At least 25% of UNHCR funding should go directly to local authorities and refugee-led organizations consistent with the grant bargain. I would say, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, to affirm the enduring relevance of UNHCR, we need to make it better managed, more efficient, and more responsive, and ultimately less needed. As someone who once sought refuge, I know what solidarity means. If given the leverage to serve as High Commissioner, I will lead with the urgency and humility, listening to refugees, empowering our partners, and ensuring that together we uphold the promise of protection that defines the best of our shared humanity. Thank you.
Thank you again to the candidates who took the time to make a video for us today. I now want to introduce to the stage our distinguished speakers and candidates for the next UN High Commissioner for Refugees. Please welcome to the stage, as I call them, firstly, Ms. Arancha González Laya, former Minister for Foreign Affairs from Spain. Ms. Nicole Demore, former Secretary of State for Asylum and Migration, Belgium. Mr. Pekka Haavisto, Member of Parliament and former Minister for Foreign Affairs, Finland. And last but not least, Mr. Szymon Hołownia, Marshal of the Sejm, Speaker of the House, Poland. A warm welcome. A warm welcome to you all again, and thank you so much for joining us for this historic event, Power, Trust and Change, Refugee Leaders in Dialogue with UNHCR Candidates. I'm honored to be moderating this dialogue today on behalf of our space. This dialogue will provide us with the opportunity to engage with some of these candidates to hear their vision in response to the urgency and complexity of today's global displacement context. My role as a moderator today is to guide this dialogue, keeping refugee priorities at the center. The questions that you'll hear tonight were drafted and shaped by refugees through a survey of refugee-led organizations in our broader refugee leadership ecosystem. Over 250 different refugee-led organizations and stateless-led organizations from around the globe shaped and voted on which questions they believed mattered most, ensuring that this dialogue reflects the most pressing challenges facing forcibly displaced communities. I will ask up to 4 questions, subject to time, as I want to leave 30 minutes for the audience to also ask questions. And with that, let's begin the conversation. The first question I have for all candidates: amidst severe financial shortfalls, notably the United States cuts, the political hostility we've seen around the globe, and a collapsing humanitarian system, what will be your top 3 priorities in your first 2 years to ensure UNHCR remains both relevant and impactful? For this first question, I will begin in the order that you are sitting. Please go ahead, Mr. Pekka.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, and thanks for ICWA and ERSIT for convening such an important venue. I know that there was also a good discussion in New York. It's also good to be back to Geneva. I was working here 6 years for UNEP and doing the post-conflict environmental assessments in several countries, including Afghanistan and Liberia and Sudan and so forth. And of course, Darfur crisis was mentioned, the Darfur situation was mentioned. I think we are all concerned what's going on exactly now in Sudan and Darfur. But to the 3 key priorities in my mind, of course, the first issue is actually in these turbulent times to protect the mandate of UNHCR. It's very important that we rely on the Convention 1951, rely on the Global Compact for refugees and so forth. In times where there's a lot of hate speech against the refugees, there's a lot of criticism against the refugees and so forth. And I think our big task is to defend the mandate. Then the second issue is actually mentioned here already many times, and it's about the financing. Of course, as a leader of the UNHCR, I would do my utmost to balance the situation. The drop that has now happened has to stop somewhere. We have to guarantee the working possibilities for those who remain in the organization and also all the partners. And it's very important that we do that. And then my third priority actually is about the nexus. I know that it's quite a lot of sometimes criticized that everybody should concentrate to their own topics, but it's very important that we keep the humanitarian, development, peace, even environment and climate together. Agencies can concentrate to their own mandates, but in our thinking, we have to have the nexus thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Arancha.
Thank you, and thank you for putting together Howdy, Jamie, Riz, and all your colleagues that I know have worked hard. This is an exercise in transparency. And for those of us who believe in transparency, this is exactly the way to go. So I really appreciate you putting this together. I want to start with a word of thanks and appreciation for the incredible work that the UNHCR staff and all partners on the ground are doing today at a time when their job is extremely difficult. I want to start there because this conversation is about these people too, those that are serving others, the forcibly displaced in a more complicated context today. What are these 3 priorities? I don't think there will be any surprise in the 3 priorities. I think we need to make sure UNHCR continues to be the voice for the forcibly displaced and their protection. UNHCR is, in a way, the voice of this convention that was built in 1951, but that is still relevant today. And the head of this organization is its CEO, its Chief Empathy Officer, not executive, but empathy. Second priority would be to prioritize with a method. The difficulty that we have in this context is that prioritizing is done across the board, with cuts across the board, with reductions across the board, without really understanding where is most needed today, where UNHCR has most value add, and where it is more relevant that we focus today to maintain the muscle of the organization. The third one, unsurprising, is to stabilize the organization from a financial and human point of view, making sure that the organization is not hampered by this constant reduction in resources. I know it is easier said than done. This is why I think I want to be very humble, but I do think that being humble but being determined, we can tackle the current challenges that the system of humanitarian support to forcibly displaced faces.
Please go ahead, Ms. Moore.
Thank you, and as my colleagues already said, I think this is very important dialogue, so I'm very happy to be here and to talk about the priorities for UNHCR. And you asked us about the priorities for the next 2 years, and I think indeed the next 2 years will be defining, will be very important for the future of the organization. And we look at the last 2 years, I can imagine that for the current High Commissioner, the last 2 years have been the most difficult of the past 10 years, but the next 2 years will, for the next High Commissioner, become very important, because we will talk about the future organization. The current budgetary situation has already forced the organization to take tough decisions now on the internal structure, on the staff, on the operations, on the ground, with devastating impacts on those operations. But the remaining, the important questions for the future remain pressing today. What will the organization look like in 10 years from now? Where will the funding come from? How will we safeguard the protection mandate of the organization? And these are the questions that need to be addressed in the coming 2 years. And of course, they are intrinsically linked to the ongoing UN80 process and the humanitarian reset. So if you ask me about the priorities for the next 2 years, of course, there are several priorities, and there are no surprises indeed. For me, it are resources, the position of UNHCR within the upcoming UN reforms, and the support for host communities. On resources, it's very clear that we need to increase the funding, the volume of the funding, but also the quality of the funding, because the budget that is left now is increasingly earmarked, which makes it very difficult to allocate resources according to the needs on the ground. So we need to diversify the funding, we need to cooperate with other actors as well, private sector, development banks, but they will not fill in the gap that is left by the traditional donors. So the traditional donors will need to step up as well, and we need more core flexible funding. I think UNHCR can also play a leadership role. That's the second priority in the upcoming UN reforms. That's about strengthening our general operational efficiency within the UN system. I think that is a no-brainer when we talk about core service areas, cooperation between humanitarian actors, but also with the development sector. It has been said already, but I think this nexus is extremely important. We need to strengthen the cooperation between UNHCR and the development sector as well when working on sustainable solutions. And this brings me to my third priority, the support for host communities. Today's budgetary situation is, of course, mostly worrying host countries, mostly low and middle income countries. And they need to see proof of the burden sharing we all agreed upon. We need to make sure our humanitarian aid benefits not only refugee populations but also host communities. We need to make sure that in our development aid we work towards integrating refugees into national development plans. This increases also their self-reliance. So I think these are important priorities for the next 2 years.
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Shimon.
I will start with one, and I will add one meta aim, one meta goal we should, I think, have on this list. Of course, it's protection of the mandate, but the mandate, it's like a Bible. We cannot change any word in it, but we should interpret it in the new way. We should try the new ways to see how this mandate rooting in the 1951 convention can work out in this world, not the decades ago, but right now, on our very borders, when people are coming and sometimes they do not have any other choice. even if they are economical migrants, or just they want to look for the chance in the different country, they have no other tool. They have only refugee and asylum instrument to work on. That's why we should work together with IOM, with other organizations, how to make ease for all of these people who are trying to find a better life, but they are not refugees themselves, to find a way to follow their dreams. And I'm telling this as a son of the migrant, because my father, of the asylum seeker, in fact, so as a son of a refugee, my father during the communism had to flee from Poland to Germany. He was in the asylum seekers camp for 2 years, waiting for the end of the procedure. So we know it in Poland. The convention was created for Polish and Hungarian refugees after World War II. We right now successfully manage the biggest refugee crisis in Europe since World War II, and 1 of the million of the refugees living still in Poland, they are fully integrated with our society. So keeping the mandate, but making like a helicopter view in it as well. First thing, of course, mindset. We are not working on damage control here. We are in the hope industry. We should not be reactive only for the gestures of United States, all the actors from the populist side and others. We should rebuild the hope in people working in UNHCR, in local agents, in refugees. We are bringing, as refugee helpers, we are bringing them hope. We are bringing them light. When the mindset would be changed, I promise you, the financing will be much easier. And this is the second thing. We should disperse financing mechanism. We cannot count on only one big donor from this or other country, or from this or other company, because otherwise we will change it to just another corporation. We don't need another corporation. We need community and organization. And I know a little bit because I founded 2 NGOs is based on crowdfunding, working in 14 countries right now, how to do it. And the third thing, very important, I think, is to decentralize. You mentioned already about localization. We should go with money, but also mandate, with responsibility, as low as possible to local communities. We should go to refugee-led organizations. We will be probably talking a little bit more about it, but let me say and underline how important thing was said just by Nicole. How important it is to work with the host communities, how important it is to show them the chances, and how important it is to build their resilience before crisis emerges, before it happens. I think it's crucial for us to be not only, as Arancha mentioned, it's very nice, chief empathy officer. The next High Commissioner should be intervener, of course, inspirator, catalyst, but also the mastermind of the diplomacy of empathy. For without it, we won't build anything.
Now moving on to the second round of questions. Recently, certain member states have used increasingly hostile rhetoric questioning the relevance of the 1951 Refugee Convention and the Global Compact on Refugees. For example, the US and other states have proposed some sort of global framework that, if successful, would significantly limit the rights to seek asylum. As High Commissioner, how would you respond to such narratives and work to safeguard these international protection frameworks? I'm going to change up the order of responses because it is Halloween and we need to make it a little scary. So first, I'm going to go to you, Ms. Arancha.
Thank you very much. Of course, let's say the UNHCR has a specificity in this network of organizations working in the humanitarian space. And its specificity is that it's the custodian of a convention. This convention dates 1951, so we would have the temptation maybe to say that this was a long time ago. But this convention was last updated in a way with the Global Compact on Refugees in 2018. And the principle in this convention is basically one of shared responsibility. Protecting forcibly displaced, and with this notion that shared responsibility. Of course, like any treaty, any convention, any human work is by definition imperfect. But maybe is the most perfect of all the imperfect solutions that we have. And my sense is that given the environment that we are in today, given the fragmentation, given the polarization, we have to tread with care. We have to be careful in not reducing the ambitions in the convention. Now, the membership that have signed on to this convention see this in different ways. Some see this convention as being too ambitious, and they would like to cut a bit. Others see this convention as too narrow. And it's true that there are other forcibly displaced that may not necessarily fit within the convention itself. Let's think about climate refugees, for example, quote unquote. But my sense, again, is that opening up this conversation at this fraught time would be risky. Now, this convention that was done by sovereigns and that engages sovereigns gives sovereigns latitude. And this is where this supervisory responsibility that UNHCR has can be better deployed in finding a way to work with sovereigns, with the states, to devise national responses that will fit within this convention. And the convention has latitude. It has latitude in third country transfers. It has latitude on procedures. It has latitude on education, on labor market. It has latitude on returns, provided it respects the basic principles in this convention, including dignity, humanity, safety. So I think, Riz, my sense would be that we would be better off trying to deploy the ability that we have, that the convention gives every state to find solutions within it, putting, again, the protection of those that are weakest in our societies at the heart of this convention. In a way, the discussion about the 1951 convention is a civilizational discussion. And this is why it matters that we do it, but it matters that we do it right too.
Over to you, Mr. Becker.
Thank you. First of all, I think that, like Arancha, that opening the 1951 convention in these circumstances is a risky business. And opening the Global Compact on Refugees is also a risky business. There are topics that should be included in the current system. Environment, climate is one of those, but I think nothing prevents us to work on those issues. But I'm very much actually looking something what I called humanitarian diplomacy at this moment. Humanitarian diplomacy sometimes is looked as a very narrow way, that it's only maybe negotiating to access to wherever there are humanitarian needs or refugees to be helped. But in my mind, we need more humanitarian diplomacy actually to implement also the compact goals. It's safe return. In some cases, we have seen in Syria what it includes and what it can happen in dignity, return in dignity. Secondly, find the third country solutions. Thirdly, helping the host communities and host countries to host the refugees and so forth. And I think these negotiation and diplomatic skills are now needed more than ever in the UN context. Also would like to raise the nexus thinking vis-a-vis the mandates of the agencies. At the same time, when we keep humanitarian development, peace, environment on the agenda, we should actually take care that the relevant agencies are doing cooperation on these topics. My own experience in the UN is that first you always feel the friendly fire when you start something from other UN agencies. They try to kill you, and then if they cannot kill you, you have to cooperate. And then in this cooperation, actually, you find sometimes solutions. That's also my experience, working with the UNDP, working with the health organization, working with the IAA and others. And what UN should be much better organized itself to taking care of this nexus. So we don't need opening of these mandates, but it's important that we do cooperation over the borders of the agencies. And of course, I would include the civil society organizations and international NGOs to this picture. I'm coming from the country where inclusion is the key topic, actually, inclusion of women, inclusion of disabled people, inclusion of youth, and so forth. And we have to have that approach also on the refugee policies. And I think many in this hall know what it means that to get included in the decision making and in the processes.
Over to you, Mr. Shimon.
Thank you so much. So let's start with the basic things. Again, first things first. What is the main reason of existing of UNHCR? It's a refugee. It's a human being. Should we discuss over the convention from 1951? Of course not. Point. This is the convention. This is the act we agreed and we should fulfill. But then there is a next question. What to do with these politicians or these populists we have all over the world who are trying to scare people with migrants, refugees, who are, cooking their political careers on it? Should we talk to them or should we preach them? Let me tell you that sometimes we should talk to them. That sometimes we will talk to them. We would talk to them. Why? Because without politicians and governments on the boat, on the stage, we would be traveling preacher men saying what is right and what is wrong. Believe me, I know something. I'm a politician right now after a long career in media, 20 years in media, 10 years in NGOs. Right now I'm a politician. Populists, they do not care about being blamed that they are breaking this convention on this rule. Even they will go to the TikTok or to the internet and they will be proud of it. Why? Because they are performing politics of fear. People are in fear right now in many countries in the world. Why? Because of the poly-crisis, because COVID happens, because war in Ukraine happened in our part of Europe, because we had financial crisis, because we have climate change crisis. People are in fear, and what they are trying to do is to burn up, to ignite this fear even more, like a cognitive dissonance. There is a cognitive dissonance, and I will hug you. I will reduce you, this cognitive dissonance. This is the thing which they are doing right now. But we have to be in this process. We have to sell hope to the local communities, to the host communities. We should take oxygen out of this narrative. We should have our own proactive storytelling to countries, and we should show politicians that it could be profitable for them to behave in the right way. I think it's still, we do have our own populists, it's still worth trying. I think that right now, one of the biggest challenges we'll be facing is rebuilding trust. Rebuilding trust not only in the institutions, but rebuilding trust in communities. That's why I think that we create more and more, not only the organization out of UNHCR, but we should think how to build around the community. So that's why just last sentence, when we will be trying to look for the new donors, of course, it's easy to go to this big corporation or the other one, but I think that right now we should concentrate more on the middle-sized and even small businesses, because even if they will be, the ability to pay this or that amount of money will be a little bit lower, we will try to find more of them and make this base for the people we want to serve even more stable. So, of course, times are extremely difficult, but never waste a good crisis. It's Winston Churchill, not me.
Last over to you, Ms. Nicole.
Thank you. Well, two things I want to comment on your question. First of all, we need to be aware that we need to protect the protection mandate today, the normative role of UNHCR. It has been said already, but we are living in very challenging times, and never before the international protection system was under such pressure, not only for budgetary reasons, but also politically, as today, with more and more states questioning the viability of the 1951 Geneva Convention. So we need to protect this mandate. In my opinion, I think if UNHCR would become a mere provider of humanitarian relief, then it, in my humble view, it would risk of becoming irrelevant. And protection is foundational to the core of the mandate of the organization. Secondly, on the current debate, in the coming years, we will see this debate on the refugee definition, on externalization of asylum procedures, and in how to respect the principle of non-refoulement in this discussion. So this debate is going on, and in my opinion, it's crucial that UNHCR is at the table in this debate. Not only as a partner to many of the stakeholders that are around the table, but as a guardian of the 1951 Convention. This is crucial. The reality is that many states today are struggling with mixed groups of people arriving at their borders, groups of migrants and refugees. States are struggling in how to differentiate between migrants and refugees, how to respect the right to asylum. So UNHCR stands ready, and this must continue in the future, to help those states to come up with better functioning asylum systems. And then, of course, in the political debate, the finger is often pointed in the wrong direction. I've experienced myself how difficult these debates were when we were negotiating in Europe the new European Pact on Asylum and Migration. Then we see states pointing the finger at the Geneva Convention, thinking that the Geneva Convention and the protection of refugees prevents them of managing their borders, which is not true. States have the sovereign rights to manage migration, to manage their borders, but this responsibility goes hand in hand with the responsibility, the obligation to protect refugees when they arrive at your borders. We do not have to choose between border management and refugee protection. Or the same goes when we hear politicians say that, for example, asylum should be a temporary status. And refugees should go home once the conditions allow so. Well, my response is always, millions of refugees dream of going home. And since the 1951 Geneva Convention, millions of refugees have in fact already rebuilt their lives in their home country, often with the support of UNHCR. But this means we must be present there. We must create safe and durable conditions for these returns to be possible. We must help the refugees to reintegrate whenever the conditions allow so. So what I want to say is that when we talk about our malfunctioning asylum system or migration management, then we often point the finger at the Geneva Convention, while the Geneva Convention is not a problem. But we should be around the table. I think UNHCR can in this way help to prevent the unraveling of the refugee regime by modernizing the protection architecture, by helping states to create partnerships, global partnerships between host and destination countries, helping them to find solutions with the struggles they find today, but without lowering the bar of international law and with core human rights principles as our compass in this debate.
And now moving to the third round of questions. With international humanitarian aid declining and severe budget constraints, refugee communities and local actors are often the first responders in crisis, yet only 1.2% of humanitarian funding, and some estimates say less than 0.01%, goes directly to refugee-led organizations. As High Commissioner, what concrete steps will you take to shift power and resources towards refugee-led organizations and local actors, advancing the localization agenda in ways that ensure protection and assistance are sustainable, impactful, and responsive to the real needs on the ground? For this question, I'm going to go first to you, Mr. Shimon.
Thank you so much. Of course, we should do everything. I think that 1 year is quite a good time to make 10% out of this 1%, not 1.2 as you mentioned, but 10% going to the local organizations, to the local partners, not only contractors. We should consider them as partners and to refugee-led organizations. I think that in 2-3 years we would be able to have this financing, localization of financing at the level of 20-30%. And it's a very important thing to give these people money to grow. Because sometimes this money are so marked, you know, and so not easy to be spent, that we are not letting those organizations to pay properly for the people's work, for the rents, for bills, for stability, for safeguard, for, you know, chance to grow. Right now, I'm one of the patrons of the program we are applying in the Polish government when we are giving micro grants to the smallest NGOs from the smallest towns. And we said to them, you should not spend it on help or, you know, projects. Spend it on yourself. Spend it on your own potential, on your own power. Don't be intimidated that you have to pay salaries for the people, right? We should build their resilience, their own strength. And I think that we can apply it in the first half of the first term of the next High Commissioner. But also, I think that very important thing is to show refugees that they are in the middle of the process. That's why I would propose kind of a global refugee leadership council, you know, made by refugees, made by people who know how to work with this money under very certain circumstances. I would like to see 10 or even more % of the people with the experience of displacement inside the organization, you know, to make it much more refugee orientated. This is my experience from my NGOs, that my role as an NGOs leader, as a project leader, is to help people with making their own choices. This is the biggest tragedy of our times, that people do have free will, but they do not have a choice. So our work sometimes is to give them option B and option C in the cafeteria of answers. When they will have choice, they would have free will. And refugee, human being, should be always in the center of all the reforms we should perform right now in UNHCR to make it more agile, more cost efficient, and more, I would say, resilient to the times which are coming.
Over to you, Nicole.
I think it's a very important question. We know that many local actors are often the first responders in emergency situations, and also the last to stay when international actors leave. But it's much more than that. Local actors have a better insight or a deeper understanding of the local culture, dynamics, historic background. So they have easier access to a lot of populations at risk. So I think it's crucial that UNHCR continues to advance locally led protection systems. As a signatory to the Grand Bargain, they have already put a lot of emphasis in recent years on localization, supporting local actors, also refugee-led organizations. I visited myself, I think 2-3 months ago in Kenya. A lot of local actors and refugee-led organizations. There was one organization that organized a child-friendly space that allowed refugee mothers to pursue work or education while their children were cared for in a safe environment. And I've witnessed myself how this organization, with the support of UNHCR, provided vocational training, financial literacy programs, psychological support, And I think this is a strong example of community empowerment, where locally based organizations and refugee-led organizations can really empower not only refugee populations but also local communities. Because what was very interesting is that among the beneficiaries of this program were 40% vulnerable Kenyans and 60% refugee mothers. So this was very interesting. So I think we should further strengthen this kind of organizations. Now, I think in recent years, the decentralization within UNHCR has helped UNHCR to work more closely through and with local actors. I'm worried that the current rationalization processes would lead to a setback in this evolution, in this development. So we should be very careful that we do not come into a setback operation right now, because of course there are a lot of key enablers that are important for localization to be a success. And you need, of course, championing by the senior management, the country representatives that need to invest in the development of partnerships. But you also need the enabling structure around it with flexible administrative requirements. I think this is crucial. But also the engagement, the empowerment of national staff is important, not only because of the knowledge of the language, but also because of the knowledge of the local culture, dynamics, background. So national staff is really important. And then finally, it's important that an organization as UNHCR has also a deep understanding of the civic space for civil society organizations in the countries they work with, and help those organizations to overcome the obstacles that they face when working in the field. Thank you.
Ms. Arancha, over to you.
Thank you. I think the most important thing is to understand that this is not an us versus them conversation, that it has to be together. That is not about UNHCR versus NGOs, refugee-led organizations, or local actors. It's jointly. That is not international NGOs versus local NGOs, is as one. So, in my view, the only way forward in an environment with less resources, if we want to be efficient and effective, the only way forward is to double down on localization. Now, this will mean, in my mind, strategizing, prioritizing, and planning together, because we need to make sure there is no dead angle, that there is no urgency and emergency that goes unmet because we didn't plan together. So it should start at the planning. It should, for sure, mean financial instruments, and simplicity in procedures and streamlining of procedures. It should mean accountability. In my view, the more there is accountability, the more there is trust, and the more there is trust, the more we can double down on localization. But there is one element that we shouldn't forget. Localization is also about culture. It's accepting the culture of localization, both in UNHCR as well as in the local actors, is learning to work with each other as one. A final point I would make, Riz, is that, before the last point, one thing to remember is that in many places, local actors have a limited way to operate. And if we want to localize, we also need to make sure that local actors have the right space to act. Final point I would make, the last thing we should do is engage into dog eats dog attitude with each other. So back to localization, working as one.
When we look UNHCR now, I think we have to agree that it has been paving the way for the whole UN to work with the non-governmental organizations and international NGOs and so forth. And I think it's not perfect, but UNHCR has showed the way. And that's why we need in the UN reform, UN80 reform, and in the humanitarian reset and so forth, take into account those lessons learned from the UNHCR. And I think the approach of the refugee organizations should be that nothing about us without us. I think it's an important principle. But then there are issues that where the localization is not the answer. And the localization is not the answer in the fundraising. We have to do fundraising on global level. Localization is not the answer to advocacy issues. Those has to be done on the global level. So I fully agree with Arancha on the issue of the cooperation. We are not against each other, but the cooperation at the local level and the global level, country level should be there. And there are also responsibilities of governments. I think sometimes when we think about the host governments, sometimes it's about the legislation and so forth. We have to act also on that level. One issue that I want to raise in this context actually is advocacy work, because what is needed for the good advocacy is good data about the refugee issues and so forth. And many local actors actually are the first one to face the situations and analyze the situations. And this kind of data should be collected and used in all advocacy work. And many governments, media, and those who are maybe spreading wrong rumors about the refugee situations are in need of good information, good data collection and so forth. And there we should use early warning methods when we see crisis growing up, when we see that after it starts very often with the hate speech, then some discrimination, then maybe a conflict situation, then the refugee problem. And as international community, we should be much more aware of the root causes of the conflicts. And there, again, I see a lot of role for the local actors and their networking towards also the global level and the UNHCR level. So I see very much opportunities for cooperation, not competing.
And this brings us to the final round of questions from me. Now shifting to participation of refugees. The Global Compact on Refugees in paragraph 34 states that responses are more effective when refugees are part of decision-making processes. However, participation remains limited in decision-making forums and at the operational level. As High Commissioner, how would you institutionalize power shifting and embed meaningful refugee leadership within UNHCR's internal structures, as well as across its external policies and programs to ensure that refugees have a central role in shaping the decisions that affect them? For this question, I'll go to you first, Nicole.
Thank you so much. And indeed, this was an important engagement we made in the Global Refugee Compact. And I've experienced myself, it's not always easy when you are, as a member of government on asylum and migration, in finding ways, if it's not part of the negotiation culture since many years, to engage with all stakeholders involved. And indeed, in order to do this, you need to have a sort of regular consultations that are established. So I think for UNHCR, it's important to establish regular consultation mechanisms so that there is it becomes part of the culture of engaging refugees, refugee-led organizations within your work, not only in the development of your policies, but also in the implementation of the policies and the evaluation of what you're doing. And you need to invest in organizations. You need to provide funding. It has already been said, but this is crucial. You need to support organizations in order to develop their own capacities to do this. We in Belgium, when we worked on our national pledges for the Global Refugee Forum, we largely engaged with refugee-led organizations, and not only with the NGOs that we know in the government for many years, because we often work with the NGOs in developing our policies and implementing our policies. But in my opinion, the traditional NGOs that we know in the asylum and migration sector are not always engaging with the refugee-led organizations. So you really need to invest in those contexts, those partnerships with these organizations. And then once you start doing this, it becomes more of a logic part of policy development. But it is not a given. It's not a given because you engage with civil society organizations or NGOs that you also engage with refugee-led organizations. So this is really a point of attention, I think, for many governments, but also for organizations such as UNHCR.
I'll go over to you, Mr. Peck.
Okay, thank you. Let me first take an example from Finland. When I was foreign minister, we had to appoint somebody to be a special envoy for peace building and mediation in the Horn of Africa. And we had an excellent guy in our diaspora, Somali diaspora, who had come as a refugee to Finland, Sultan Said Ahmed. So we appointed him to be the special envoy on Horn of Africa and Somalia situation. And of course, everybody was a little bit surprised in the region first that the guy from the diaspora can take this kind of task. But I think that shows the possibilities that we have in a diaspora and in a refugee-based population, that it's actually, we can use the talents, we can use the capacities of these people in our societies, and there has to be good examples of that. I'm very much thinking also the UN 1325 and UN 2250 resolutions, youth peace and security, women peace and security, that it should also be so that the refugee community and refugee-led organizations are involved in all this inclusion that these UN resolutions brings and those decisions UN resolution brings. And I'm very open as probably, or in if selected, to open the decision-making processes so that the refugee-led organization could be part of the information, part of the roundtable discussions and so forth. And this should be regular, actually, that hearing and listening the community. And then maybe my last remark on this topic is that refugees are not only one group. There are differences. There are political opinions that might differ and so forth. And we shouldn't always think refugees as one unity, but also thinking about the minorities, different political opinions in the refugee community and so forth, and to take account all these minorities as well.
Over to you, Mr. Shimon.
Thank you so much. I had this experience from my parliamentary work that it's always better to have more people on the table. It makes Parliament much safer, a little bit calmer, but it's much more inspirational and productive as well. We opened, for instance, in the Polish Parliament, the mechanism of public consultation of the bills. Right now, everyone can, just log into the system and comment on every bill we are working on. And this is very good tool. And I had this feeling that it's making our, and I'm pretty sure that it's making our legislation much, much better now. That's why I just reiterate, I will set up Global Refugee Leadership Council. I will let refugees to sit at the table together with states, together with organizations, and cooperatively make decisions on budget, on priorities. They will bring absolutely, fundamentally important insight from the field. That's why I reiterate again that I would like to have 10% of the people working in UNHCR with the replacement experience. We want them on board. We want them with their DNA, with what happened in their lives, to show way to other people, to make this organization even much more concentrated on refugees. I would say that Filippo Grandi did tremendous work. And as Arancha started, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to all the workers of UNHCR. And I want to tell you that really I know how difficult it is right now, emotionally, politically, on many levels, but believe me, there is hope. This is only bend on the road, that we will go stronger out of this crisis, because we are strong people, and in very difficult times, strong people are creating good times. You will see that it will happen. It will be my greatest task and the first task to be done if I would be the pick, if I would be chosen as a High Commissioner, to build this teamwork, to show all of you working in UNHCR on Global South here in Geneva that we are community, we are a team, and we will make it. I promise you, I wouldn't be promising you that we will make UNHCR great again, because I would, it's probably trademarked, but I will say that we really together can make miracles. And look, these 5-10 years, it will be a crucial time. the future of the world will be decided, not only politically, but politically as well. Look, we will see what will happen in Africa. We see what's going on with demography in Africa versus climate change pace in Africa. We will see what will be the outcome of the process in 5, 10 years. I think it's a great adventure ahead of us, let me say. It will be tough, it will be difficult, it will be bumpy, but bumpy times, it's something which makes us human. Because we should be more creative, we should do more, we should sometimes do more sacrifices, but tough times are a challenge. Not a reason for depression or this feeling that we just been defeated by the populists. I'm telling you, somehow I know how to, as a politician, active politician, I know how to hack the system. I can give you some hints about it, you know, how to go to the minds of these politicians who are right now making use and making profit out of hatred. Because there is a reason for which they are doing so. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so grateful that I'm here and I can talk with the colleagues. I think we are kind of a perfect team together, so it will be because, you know, every one of us with our points of view and a little bit different sensitivity on different topics, I think we could form probably the best team for the job, and we should send this conclusion to Antonio Guterres from this evening.
And last but not least, I'll go to you, Ms. Arancha.
Let me now try to land this after this elevation, but I think this conversation is about how to make UNHCR most effective. And it can only be most effective if it meaningfully engages, and the word that matters in meaningfully engages is meaningfully, not engages, meaningfully engages refugees and meaningfully engages host countries. This is what this paragraph 34 says. And it's important because at the end of the day, this is what we, at the university where I am now, we say nothing about us without us. And it's legitimacy for a start. How many times have I faced solutions being devised about women empowerment without women being at the table? Many. How many times have I witnessed youth solutions without young people being around the table? But this is no different. Refugees need to be around the table when we are planning, programming, devising solutions, when we are bringing communities together, when we are communicating, because they are more legitimate voices. And this legitimacy is an important consideration for an organization like UNHCR. Finally, this is also about effectiveness. In my many incarnations in the past, I was executive director of the International Trade Center here in the city, working a lot on this humanitarian development nexus, of which we talk about, but doing it on the ground was amazing. And I know, having worked with many of these refugees on the ground, that they are very often those that can give us the best clues about the best solutions. So yeah, it's nothing about refugees without refugees.
And on that note, I would now like to open to the audience for questions. And someone will be handing a mic to you. I've got one here in the middle and then one in the corner. Could you please stand up?
Oh, sure. Hi, Alan Kalma from the Lutheran World Federation. Thank you so much for the excellent conversations. And as Shimon said, like, you know, if you could have like the Switzerland style of rotation, maybe this could work with the four of you. I'm very heartened by the fact that all of you mentioned that the priority, as far as you're concerned, is the fact that, you know, we need to protect our mandate. And I like what Nicole said, that without this protection of mandate, UNHCR could become irrelevant. You cannot just be a provider of humanitarian response. And I think that's really, really important, and glad that you all mentioned it very, very strongly. My question is, how do you safeguard that independence when, by safeguarding that independence, it actually could come at a political or economic cost? I think that's basically how do you balance that? And I think, Pekka, you mentioned about humanitarian diplomacy, and of course that plays a role, and most of this we don't see from the NGO perspective because this happens behind closed doors. But maybe it would be interesting to see how do you approach that. The second one is UNHCR is currently undergoing a major restructuring, and leadership transition comes with this inherited structures and unfinished reforms, and that could possibly be what will happen. I would like to know, what would guide your decision in what to keep and what to change in this revised restructured UNHCR that you're going to inherit if you take the position? Thanks.
And maybe we'll go to this question and then we'll answer 3 together.
Thank you so much for this. Yeah, it works. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I would like to ask the question as a refugee myself currently, and it touches on the round 3 and 4 that you have answered. Will you bring any changes in terms of the method of delivery or the end products that UNHCR brings, and how will that impact the communities, the refugees, and the host communities and governments? That's first. And second, where laws do not permit the refugees integrations in the localizations you're talking about, in integrations in local markets, international markets, do you have any point in your visions to tackle this aspect? And would UNHCR be the alternative platform for refugees in this case? Thank you.
May I please ask you to repeat the first question? We lost a little bit because keep the mic here.
Oh, sorry. Okay, the first part of the question is will you bring any changes in terms of the method of delivery or the end service or products that UNHCR provides, and how will that impact the refugees and the host governments and communities? Thank you.
So we have about 4 questions with the 2. One was around the independence and protection of the mandate, the independence that is required and how you would do that. The second was around what would guide your decision making and the restructuring of UNHCR and the approach that you take, what to keep, what not to keep. And then the second round of questions from our second speaker was around the delivery and services, what changes you would make, if any, and then also around the integration in the local markets and the role of UNHCR in that. So I will go this way, or whoever wants to start. If you've, okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Excellent questions. And to the first question, it was about, sorry, I missed already the line here. Independence, financial independence, and to paying the price. Yes, you are right that when you keep the principles, there might be some donors who don't like your principles, and then they reduce the support and so forth. But I have to remind, for example, when we look at the US funding currently, yes, UNHCR has lost a lot of US funding, but US still remains the biggest supporter of the UNHCR this year. And of course, for the coming High Commissioner, it's a main task to try to guarantee the funding for the organization and have those discussions and have those negotiations. It's part of the diplomatic efforts, of course. It's very important that the High Commissioner can talk to everyone and is in good terms with all key players, host communities, host countries, but also the donor community. Then the second question was about the restructuring of the UNHCR organization and where to put the priority. Of course, sometimes it feels that the UN agencies are top-heavy, and I think the but should not be cut is the expertise on the ground and representation on the ground, which is very important. So my preference, of course, would be that UNHCR can keep those activities on the ground. Then to your question about the cost, the delivery issues and what can be done, I think the cost efficiency is very important. That what is those products that and services that can be provided locally, if they are cost efficient, better cost efficiency is better than what UN or UNHCR can produce. I think there is a good argument to use other sources for that, and you can, for example, think that the logistical costs are quite high currently from the UN. If there are alternatives, I think those should be looked very, very carefully. And then the final question actually was that on the local market, can the refugees enter to the local market or be local entrepreneurs? And this is the issue which is about the legislation of the host countries and so forth. And again, it's not a magic tool, but humanitarian diplomacy, the discussions with the host country, how to integrate the refugee communities to local society and local market is very, very important. And I think you touched a very key point, how to get refugees integrated to the host countries.
Go ahead. So the UNHCR is is an intergovernmental organization. The shareholders of this organization are governments. And the biggest asset of the head of the organization is called trust. And in order to get this trust, you have to be impartial. But you don't have to be, and you can never be indifferent. And these are the boundaries within which you have to operate. You have to be principled, but not stubborn, and you have to be pragmatic, but not opportunistic. These are the boundaries where the head of an organization has to operate. It has to be able to engage with everyone, because if it engages with only a few, it will not be effective, and it has to maintain a moral compass. This is my vision and I think it's doable. Look, I mean, we have a high commissioner that is very much that. So, it's not like we're looking for something that, un mouton à cinq pattes, as they say in this city. What to keep and what to shed. In my view, it would be very important that, and let's say that a lot has already been done in that front too. I mean, the UNHCR is not waiting for the new High Commissioner to come to do the work. The question now is, how does one take the strain and build with a perspective of the next 20 years? Not the next 20 months, the next 20 years. And here's the difficulty, because you need to get through the next 20 months to prepare the next 20 years. In my view, it's very important to keep the assets of UNHCR, which is its normative capacity and its operational capillarity on the ground. If I look at the UNHCR, it's the organization in the UN system that has the most capillary presence all across geographies. This is a huge asset. And I think this is an asset that is worth investing on. On host communities and rather on local labor markets, you've got two parts. I'm glad that you sit it where you sit it, because your next door neighbor has one part of the answer. One part is legislation. A possibility to work, possibility to be an entrepreneur, possibility to exercise an economic activity, to open a bank account, and the rest. The other part, that's the humanitarian, let's say. This is with the legislative part. But then there is the other part, which is building the capacity of those communities to be integrated into the labor market. I'm pointing at the neighbor because he works in an organization that does that. So maybe you talk a bit.
Thank you for your questions, and I'll try to answer them, the 4 questions a bit together. Your first question on how and to protect the protection mandates. First of all, and I think all of you are aware of that, all of you working in this sector of refugee protection, there are no easy jobs. I've worked in refugee protection ever since I graduated in different positions in politics, but also academically, also in civil society, at the asylum instance. And I can say, if you want an easy job, you should work in another sector. It's a very difficult task. And your question, and Arancha already said it, it's a difficult task for a high commissioner. A high commissioner needs to be a principled but diplomatic communicator and needs to build bridges, build partnerships. This is crucial. You need you need to do it with a lot of diplomacy, but also with a heart for the people of concern to the organization. The word empathy has already been used a couple of times here. I'm happy we all agree on that, but that's crucial. You need to do this with this empathy. A High Commissioner is not only the manager of the organization, but also the face of the organization and the advocate for the people of concern to the organization. Now, on the reforms, and the question, and I have been asked this question the last couple of months during this process of being a candidate a lot of times, what are you going to skip? What are you going to leave? What is UNHCR still going to do, and what are you going to leave behind? This comes from the idea that sometimes that UNHCR is doing a lot of things that are not needed. Well, of course, this is not the case, and this is always the danger when you talk about reforms and efficiency gains. This discussion is it looks like we haven't done anything in the past years, while the current High Commissioner has, in the previous 10 years, modernized the organization, professionalized the organization, and even in the years before that. And so the danger is that we only look at this, while I think where we really need to reform is in the cooperation UNHCR has with other UN actors and other humanitarian actors, development actors. I've already mentioned this, but I think there are not a lot of things that we can skip, but we can be more efficient in who does what, for whom, and when, and where. So I strongly believe that both in the humanitarian reset as well as in the UN80 process, there are some interesting proposals that lie on the table that can improve the general operational efficiency among humanitarian organizations, and that the real efficiency gain is there and lies in a better or stronger cooperation. And then finally, what is really crucial is that we make this paradigm shift from crisis response to durable solutions, and that is why where we need to engage with the development sector, we need to include refugees into national development plans, because those durable solutions, they want to reduce the dependency on humanitarian aid, increase self-reliance, ease pressure on host communities, and that's why we need this paradigm shift.
I'm in a difficult and tricky position because Arancha already said everything I wanted to say, so maybe I will just make a point and give you a weather forecast, or I will try to entertain you in any other way. But to be serious, yes, of course, the next High Commissioner should be believer, should be dreamer, but should be a pragmatist as well. And, you know, actually, I'm probably the only one politician in my country, very polarized one, who can have good personal relationship with Prime Minister and President, you know. They used to fight with each other very intensely. And when I'm trying to say, hey, but it's good to have relationship with the both sides, because we have only one country, they're saying, oh, you are more like UN in this, you know. You are two United Nations for the nations. Nation politics. Of course, next High Commissioner should stand behind the dogma of the protection, because the protection, I would say, make protection great again. You know, the protection is the most sexiest word on earth. Protection is what we are doing to the loved ones, to our children, to our families. Protection is not a legal term only. It's something we should follow. We should make infectious again, you know, to show people that being a part of protection network, it's something worth of some sacrifices, something worth of this or other decision, something worth of believing in hope once again. I think that it will be very difficult, of course, to discuss with this or other country, if, you know, when we will be asking them for money. But I remember what happened in Poland. In Poland, NGOs sector, when USAID was cut down. And how difficult time it was for a lot of NGOs who were strictly dependent on the money from the one big grant giver. I call it sometimes grantosis, you know, this concentration on grants. We should go to people, to small businesses. You know, we have a logo. This blue logo still brings hope to millions of peoples in the world. I can name you a number of companies, small companies in Poland, who will be thankful to be a part of this network of hope with this logo, you know, for a moderate, I would say, monthly payment. We should concentrate on the people and on the countries of goodwill and talk to anyone, but of course, with smile, but with consequence. Tell them, okay, this is our position, and we won't move an inch and centimeter from this. But we are still here, smiling to you and really wanting the argument with you on some issues. Why are you afraid? Maybe there is something we can solve together. You know, sitting here in the marble tower of being right, it's not a solution for the social media politics and for social media era. The next thing is how to, and I will concentrate, because restructurization, you should always start when you have all the data on the table. And for me, as a dogma, it should be that people are the biggest treasure in such an organization, because there is institutional wisdom which comes with them, operational wisdom which comes with them. So they should be protected. But of course, we should be more agile, and especially people in the countries in the global south, in UNHCR offices, in regional offices, should be protected, because they know the culture, they know the language, they know how to operate in this very difficult sometimes situation. And the last thing on this question of, it was extremely interesting question about local entrepreneurs, about local chances of the refugees living in different countries. We started in my NGOs one of the small projects with refugees from Moria camp on Lesbos. We started with feeding, with food, providing food to the children, to thousands of them. And then we started small factory of olive oil. Then out of this factory of olive oil, we have training apartments program, and people are looking for new capacity, new ability, you know, to find themselves in the job market. That's why we should work with local communities, not only for going step by step, making these baby steps for fundamental, basic needs up to going to the job market, but we should together, and this nexus would be very useful here, we should give them tools to be competitive in the newest technologies, on the modern job market. We should give them courses. We should help their children to be competitive on this very demanding new era, new technology market. And I think we can plan it, because I met here in Geneva a lot of people in different organizations. I can't wait to work on it together. I know it's not strictly UNHCR mandate, but nevertheless, if we are doing cluster approach, if we are doing Nexus, let's do it.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. Oh, now two next to each other. If you want to negotiate between the both of you. If they're not long questions, we could possibly take both.
It's a very quick question. And let me first congratulate you and ICFA for doing this. It's nice to see how this whole process has developed. 25 years, I was one of the 2 people who actually started asking the candidates then for their positions on why they wanted to have the job. My name is Ed Schenkenberg. Quickly picking up on the point Nicole made, because I was going to ask you, I only hear you as candidates saying what UNHCR should do more. And I was going to ask you, what should it do less of? Because the system is going to be significantly smaller. Is already, but will further have to reduce. And you said actually, well, it should collaborate more. The way the system works is no agency gets rewarded for stepping back. You're getting your funding because of your profile. So what does that mean actually when you say, so the question on your relationship with IOM. If you're getting, you're in the position for High Commissioner for Refugees, not in the position for, or yet at least in terms of, a merged IOM and UNHCR. Yet I'm interested what your thinking is on the merger between IOM and UNHCR.
Well, I was going to ask exactly the same question, but my name is Antonio Donini. I participate in an organization called United Against Inhumanity. I wanted to thank everybody here, as everybody else has done. I don't disagree with anything that you have said, but I'm worried that you haven't said some important things. For example, is the love affair between Western donors and UN organizations, and in particular UNHCR, fraying at the edges? Is it going to go on, or is it going to stop? My sense is that we're at an inflection point where the certainties of the past, where we have to go beyond doing more with less. We have to really think about our business model here. And the business model that is run by an oligopoly of Western donors, big UN organizations, and the large federations of international NGOs, I think that's the past. I think we have to look at the future, because this love affair is not going to last, in my view. Thank you.
I'll turn to the panel to respond to mergers and love affairs. Go ahead, Nicole.
Okay. I'll try to be brief because I have a lot of things to say about this, but because these are the last questions, I propose to continue the dialogue after that during the reception. I have to say the question on the merge of IOM and UNHCR is possibly the question I got most in recent months. Well, the answer is quite easy. We talked about protecting the protection mandate. If we want to safeguard the protection mandate of UNHCR, I do not think that a merge between IOM and UNHCR is the right thing to do. That doesn't mean that there is no stronger or a need for a stronger cooperation. Of course, not only with current budgetary constraints, but also with the mixed migration movements, with a lot of challenges that both organizations are facing. It's crucial that the organizations closely cooperate, and that we also avoid overlap of activities between both organizations. But I do not think that a merge will solve all of our problems. I've always advocated for a strong differentiation between refugees and migrants. Both need good policies, and both need good solutions that protect their fundamental rights, but those solutions are not the same. So I think in order to protect the mandate of UNHCR, I'm not in favor of a merge, and I think if we talk about better cooperation, it's not only between UNHCR and IOM. There are a lot of other organizations as well where there is a need for stronger cooperation. And then the other question is how? Well, indeed, there are not a lot of incentives within the current system to cooperate. So you need to make sure that there are such incentives. I think a stronger position, a strong country teams with residence coordinators, humanitarian coordinators is important. And of course, I know it's part of the humanitarian reset. I think it's crucial there to look how we can strengthen the cooperation within these country teams and under the resident coordinator. Often the resident coordinators are now referred to as emperors without clothes. So I think it's important to see how we can solve this issue, also to review the architecture through which funding is delivered. That could be an important element as well, with a strategic position of pooled funding. And I'm not saying pooled funding should replace the current funding system, but I think we can make sure there is some incentive there for a stronger cooperation. And then you need also the right persons in the right positions. You need the right persons as resident and humanitarian coordinators, because also for them it's a difficult job where you need to be principled but diplomatic communicators to bring everybody around the table and to work in a mindset of cooperation. So that cultural shift is really important and demands the right leadership, I think.
So, having worked for a few years, actually a few decades in the UN, I've heard a lot about mergers of UN agencies. I've not seen any yet, but maybe there is hope. Now, let's make sure we don't use this as an excuse not to work together better, not to reduce duplications, not to avoid stepping into each other's toes. So let's make sure that we get this debate right. This debate is about efficiency and effectiveness. And there are ways and ways and ways to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness, even without contemplating the merger, which is the north face of any conversation within the UN, as any UN insider knows. Second point I would make, the rewards to organizations are generally for results and impact. One big thing that, and the result and impact that UNHCR should look at is, the marker in my mind is less how much money it gets, but rather how many less forcibly displaced people there are in the world, how many less stateless people there are in the world. That should be our marker. Now, in order to get to that result, part of the answer is not with UNHCR, and it will not be. Part of the answer is in tapping into the available resources that exist in the development, on the development side, and in particular on international financial institutions that today find it too risky to go to the places where these forcibly displaced people are, where the stateless people are. And this is a conversation whether the UNHCR may not necessarily be an actor, but can be an orchestrator, can be an informer, can guide a little bit better the allocation of resources with a sense of risk-taking, but also with a sense of impact on the ground. Final point I would make. You know, Mark Twain and news of my death have been greatly exaggerated. So I feel it's a little bit like this when we say the era of this is over, we are in a new era. I think we should leave no stone unturned. And this includes traditional funders to UNHCR. And we should not be discounting anyone, at least not at this point, when every single penny counts. So double down on the old ones, double down on the opportunities that exist for new ones. I've been watching what UNHCR national committees do. They have very variable results. They are tapping into citizens' generosity. And to my mind, there is a very big space available for citizens' generosity when the purses of governments may be a bit tighter. And let's make sure this development humanitarian nexus is also better informed with the intel that UNHCR can bring to the table. Shimon, I'll go to you next.
Sometimes I really do feel like privileged that I do not have a long UN experience because when I'm coming here, I think I can offer you kind of a little bit different perspective. And from this different perspective, I have to agree with Arancha, who actually has long UN experience, because I think that if we will start right now with another long-lasting academic debate. Should we merge with IOM or not? It will lead us to sit in this very ballroom, I don't know, in 10 years or 20, still debating it. Right now, the most important thing is, as it was said, closer cooperation with IOM, with WFP, with other organizations, especially with IOM. Because I will say it again, on the, not only on the Polish border, on the many of our borders, you have people who are coming to search for a better life, but the only mechanism they can have is applying for asylum, is applying for a refugee status, even if they are economical migrants. So there is a huge task on the side of IOM with the support and inspiration of UNHCR, how to persuade states to create all the ways to being able to come to the country. Right now, the collective West, I would say, you know what we are doing in the West. We are practicing this refugee renterism. So we are paying, you know, some countries to keep refugees at bay. We are fining airlines €500,000 for a person for not letting them come to, letting them fly to the West. So right now, the best possible thing is to join forces, to show countries like Poland, like other countries, how to solve the problems on the job market, for instance, how to solve the problems with collapsing demography, for instance, and make a profit for the people and for the country at the very same time. So I think that we should work closer together, and when it comes to this restructurization, and you know, the only one thing that should guide us right now is how to be more agile and how to keep as many people with experience, especially with field experience of solving these problems, active in the organization. Of course, it's the 21st century. We have artificial intelligence. We have new ways to build new tools, you know, based on it to help our work being more effective. But we still have to keep this feeling that we are people-orientated organization. People-orientated organization, and not only refugee-orientated organization, but also workers, you know, field workers-orientated organization. I think it's practically perfectly, you know, possible to be done during the next term. Thank you so much.
And lastly, over to you, Pekka.
Thank you. And there is the old truth, which is truth also with UN organizations, that everybody wants to coordinate, but nobody wants to be coordinated. And I think this is the question also when we look to IOM-UNHCR relationship, and I'm answering in a very political way of the politician, that both ways are possible. But if we analyze first that these organizations are kept separately, there are some common areas like IDP questions or safe return of the refugees to their home countries and others which both organizations are doing. And there has to be clarification in which case, which organization is using its capabilities. And also the fundraising sometimes could be done together. This is of course a revolution in the UN, but I propose that some revolutions we sometimes need. Coordinate with the organizations who is doing what and where. If done so that these organizations are put together, then it's very important to take care of the UNHCR mandate, that the mandate will remain, because if the mandate is taken away, then the whole idea of the UNHCR is away. Then the question of the love affair, is this the end of the Western financing to the UNHCR? I think it's a good question, but when talking to the Western governments, they have concerns. UK is taking some concerns, Poland is expressing concerns, Italy is expressing concerns. Let's listen those concerns. Those concerns are very often about the concerns about mixed migration. Do we have tools to address it? Do we have tools to recognize the real people who need the refugee status and so forth? I know that it's a big challenge, but I think it's one of the keys to keep also the financing from the traditional donors, and then let's address the new donor community. There are the Gulf countries, China is a new player probably, development banks, regional development banks, and I'm always surprised how interested the private sector is actually on supporting. When looking to Japan or USA, the UNHCR associations are collecting enormous amount of the money, and that's actually because the reputation of UNHCR is good, the trademark is good, Filippo Grandi has done good work, and also the whole staff of the UNHCR has done excellent work. Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of the panel. I ask you just to remain seated for one moment. So firstly, I want to thank each of the candidates for engaging in this critical and important dialogue. And I want to thank each of you, representatives of different states, UN and NGO colleagues, and refugee leaders for joining us in this pivotal moment. We know that the next High Commissioner will face immense challenges, but also immense opportunities and possibility if we're all collaboratively working together with refugees centered in that work. So as a token of our appreciation, we do have a gift for each of our candidates. And just to describe it a little bit, it is from a local business in Syria, and the woman who has made these and engraved them, the seamstress, is herself a returnee back to Syria. So it is really symbolic and representative of also the hope that we hope to have in the system of people getting durable solutions. It is engraved with your names on the inside, so if you open it, you'll be able to see. And really, just as a thank you for your engagement in this dialogue, for your willingness to be here at an event led by refugee leaders. Please do open them. They'd like to get a photo, and the audience would like to see it. And as they're opening them, I'll do my little talk show thanks in the background. Thank you to our partners, ICVA. Thank you for all the Our Space members for putting this together. And of course, thank you to you all. And there's a lot of history. There's a note inside that explains more details about what it means, where it comes from, and how it's been made. And so we hope that, we wish you all the best with your journey and your candidacy, and we hope that you'll continue to work with refugee-led organizations in whatever you do, whether as High Commissioner or another leadership position. So thank you, and thank you all. The most important part, there's food and drinks now served outside, so please enjoy.